Hello, I wanted to record a PowerPoint for you about anemia, and you can see the reference chapters there. Our topics for this are defining anemia, erythropoiesis, what that is, kind of what stimulates it. The erythrocyte structure and function are important. Understanding the labs is key, and then identifying the types, causes, and treatment. So our definition for anemia is any condition. Anemia is kind of a generic term, so it's any condition in which there's a decrease either in the number of red blood cells or in the hemoglobin, which leads to, of course, then a decreased ability to carry oxygen to meet all physiologic needs of the body. And the definition, kind of the number, the level, depends and varies by the factors that you read here. Interesting that pregnancy status makes a difference, and you can kind of check out what that difference might be. We don't have just one set of normal ranges as a result of this variation. It depends on the age of the person and the gender even. The WHO, World Health Organization criteria for anemia is from your Arcangelo text, and you can see it there. Men is less than 13, women less than 12. Thresholds on page 891 by age or gender. And the biggest difference being men have a little bit higher levels of hemoglobin hematocrit, as you likely know. So what we want to talk about next is kind of the differentiation into the various necessary cells. So over on the far left, you see the kind of the stem cell pool. And the first cell is the totipotential, multipotential. That's the cell that can literally be kind of anything when it grows up. And then it has to commit at some point to a type of cell line. And the lineage commitment depends on kind of stimulatory factors and the body's need and so forth. But we're going to kind of focus on the bottom part of this diagram. So in the middle, you've actually got the bone marrow pool. So just to be clear, the stem cell pool on the left, that's a pool, and it kind of is maintained in health, of course. There's a kind of a number of pluripotent and committed cells that self-renew. So that's kind of always ongoing. Then in the middle, you've got the bone marrow pool. That is actually in the bone marrow where the cells are actually proliferating and they're kind of maturing. They're getting ready to be set forth out into the circulation to do their thing. There are also, so you see you've kind of got two groups. In the middle one there, you've got those that are proliferating, and then you've got those that are they're ready, but they're just in storage. They're just kind of waiting to get called. Then on the far right, you see what's going on in the actual peripheral blood. Now we're going to focus on the erythrocyte on the bottom because this is about anemia, which is all about the erythrocyte or the red blood cell. So there's two pools here. And now as you can see, for granulocytes, which those become our basophils, neutrophils, there's a storage right in the peripheral system. And then there's some that are actively working. And there you've got a 50-50. When you look at the erythrocytes, there's zero storage. Like all those babies are up and running and carrying oxygen around. So that kind of also is something I want you to think about and keep in mind when you are looking at your lab values. Just know that all of the hemoglobin, let's say, that's actively functioning. There's no storage capacity. Okay. So erythropoiesis is our fancy name for creation of red blood cells. And erythropoietin, is a hormone that's created and secreted by the kidney. We lovingly and affectionately call it EPO. Okay, so this kind of is a slide that is depicting how the whole process happens. So the kidney does play a role in our normal hemoglobin and red blood cell concentration because it secretes a hormone. What stimulates the kidney to secrete a hormone? Well, if you look on the left, there's a low RBC concentration, but actually it's the sensitivity to decreased tissue oxygenation. So the kidney is sensitive to low oxygen. That triggers it to secrete EPO, or erythropoietin. Then EPO goes to the marrow where we get red blood cell production, thus bringing up our normal red blood cell concentration. Now, this is a little foreshadowing, but this is what's at play in what's called anemia of chronic disease, primarily kidney disease, but you also can see it in chronic inflammatory conditions. This whole piece is kind of not fully functioning. Next, we have erythropoiesis. Again, this is just kind of showing you the progression from the progenitor cell on the left. That's kind of your bone marrow storage pool, and then erythropoietin acts on it and gets things committed and moving. Of interest is the reticulocyte, the second to the last one. The cell does leave the marrow not fully functioning, which is kind of interesting. And then look at the difference between the erythrocyte, the reticulocyte, and the erythrocyte. So it kind of grows up fully out in the bloodstream, and there's some key things about this that we'll talk about. The other thing I want you to note is the change in the shape of the cell. This is erythrocyte progenitor on the far left, and as it's transforming and as it's maturing and developing, it is synthesizing hemoglobin. Progressively, it eliminates its organelles, its DNA, and even its nucleus. So the cell kind of goes from this big shaped, globby shape to the fine, wonderful disc shape that we're so familiar with. And it shrinks, and as the nucleus shrinks, the ability for the cell to synthesize hemoglobin increases. This takes place in the bone marrow.